Michael Portillo, your 1997 defeat became a symbol of the Tories' downfall in 1997. What was it like to be Michael Portillo in that election count?
Well, maybe not as bad as you might think. I was in some ways quite relieved to lose. You may think that odd, but what I really cared about was being in government, and I had no doubt whatsoever that the Tories were going to go out of government that night. Had I won my seat, I would have had to contest the leadership of the Conservative Party, which I was not keen to do because we had been reduced to a rump, and I knew the Tories wouldn't be back for 10 to 15 years, as indeed turned out to be the case. So there was a certain relief to not winning and a certain amount of graveyard humour. By the way, I was pretty prepared for it. An opinion poll in the seat the Sunday before had led me to believe that I might lose it. And I was astonished that just before going to my count, I'd been on Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman, and I couldn't believe that he didn't ask me, have you lost your seat? Because it was the first thing that occurred to me. So when I got to the count, I knew I'd lost. I also saw a very disagreeable spat between Jimmy Goldsmith and
David Mellor.
David Mellor. I had the name a minute ago. And I thought, whatever I do, it's not going to be like that. There's not going to be any unpleasantness. You know, I must find the magnanimity in the moment. I think I was, I think in a way the shock came afterwards. You have to get used to doing things like getting on buses and going on tubes. And you have this sensation that everybody's looking at you in the sandwich queue, either feeling contemptuous about you or feeling sorry about you. So that was more difficult to deal with. I'm not sure that I had realised the extent to which I'd become symbolic of the unpopularity of the Conservative Party, but it was brought home to me, and people like you bringing it up 25 years later just helps to remind me.
Did it hurt when people used to say, were you up for Portillo? I think there was a book called Were You Still Up for Portillo? About that, the 1997 election. Did it hurt you in any way that people were gleeful, people on the left, obviously, or people who did not support the Tory party? Was there hurt involved?
There might have been some. I don't remember much enduring hurt. Certainly no enduring hurt. You know, the first thing you have to do is find something else to do with your life, and that's all worked out, you know, pretty well. And we might come to that later. But you know, I'm sorry that I managed to make myself so unpopular, because apart from anything else, that doesn't make you a very successful politician. You know, politics is about winning elections. So I think it possibly helped to remove any illusions I might have about wanting to be the leader of the Conservative Party. And although I contested it in 2001, I must say I did so pretty half-heartedly, or rather, I only wanted to do it if I won with a decisive majority. And when it was clear that I wasn't going to do that, that if anything I'd win by a vote or two, then I lost interest in doing that.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong about these perceptions. I would say that today you're a national treasure. Got a really successful TV career, and frankly, people wouldn't want you to present TV and radio programmes if they didn't think you were popular. But this is my recollection from being a 20-year-old Labour activist, that you were a political bogeyman. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, how do you get to become a political bogeyman? How does one become a political bogeyman?
Well, part of it, I think, is that you build a pigeonhole for yourself. Because to get noticed in British politics, it's useful that people understand certain things about you. But the problem is, if you build a pigeonhole, let's say marked right wing, then any information that endorses that point of view goes into the pigeonhole. And any information that is contrary to that perception just gets discarded. So people become very one-dimensional as far as the media and press are concerned. I mean, for example, I think if you go back and ask civil servants or the military, because I was Secretary of State for Defence, what sort of a person I was when I was in office, they would have a different view from what was the general perception. Or if you ask my friends, really, if I've ever been any different at any time in my life, I would say probably I haven't. You say that I'm a national treasure. I'm actually merely on the ladder to being a national treasure. There's some distance to go yet. I'm not an Ed Balls figure at this stage, but working towards it. And yet, I still do political stuff. And when I do political stuff, I don't pull my punches. You know, if people ask me what I think about the European Union, I'll tell them. And so that's quite interesting to me, that people now seem more willing to see me in segments. So the person who takes them around for a jolly ride on the train and tells them about history is somehow allowed at different times, on different channels, at different times of the day, still to have political opinions, which are pretty forthright, actually.
You made a comparison with Ed Balls. I think he might have become a national treasure due to Strictly Come Dancing.
Absolutely.
Would you do it?
No, I would not do it. No, Ed did it very well. I mean, Ed has amazing talent outside politics, but he's also done a terrific cooking thing, hasn't he? And
yeah.
I think he won. All credit to him for doing that.
And this other perception, or perhaps misconception, is that I sort of think of you now as sort of like it's not the right description, but like a Hampstead liberal. Like, I don't know, like almost metropolitan elite, but not in a mean way. But when you were a politician, you were described as, arch right winger, Thatcherite, Eurosceptic. Which perception was wrong, or have you changed?
Well, I'm certainly metropolitan. My entire life has been in London. I'm certainly elite. I mean, I went to a grammar school, so I'm not elite in the way that some people are. But as soon as you've been in politics for a number of years and you've been in the cabinet, and now you have TV shows, you can't be anything other than sort of elite. And it's quite difficult to stay in touch with perceptions. I'm liberal in the old-fashioned sense that I believe in things like free speech and allowing people to live their lives, as they wish. But I'm probably not liberal in the sense that the left might mean that word today. And I'm certainly not a metropolitan elitist liberal, if you put all those three words together. And by the way, none of those things is new. I mean, I've always been all of the things that I am today.
Did you vote to leave the European Union? If you did.
I did, with enthusiasm. Shall I say something to you about
please.
that? Because, for example, I am the holder of a Spanish passport as well as a British passport. I know Spain pretty intimately. And that indeed is one of the reasons why I'm a profound Eurosceptic, because it struck me that the countries of Europe are so different. They have such different political cultures. The meaning of citizen, the meaning of state are different in each of these places. And so I couldn't at all understand the aspiration to want to govern Europeans in general. And I couldn't at all see how you could achieve a government of Europeans in general that would be accountable and democratic. And these are my objections. And the fears that I had, I thought I saw played out in the way that the European Union was moving, always relentlessly moving towards ever closer European Union. And the way, for example, that the Greeks were treated over the euro, I thought was absolutely appalling, and showed the illiberalism of the institution and the lack of accountability and the terrible consequences that could be paid by ordinary people in terms of their loss of income and loss of lifestyle and so on, with an ideology being responsible and a bureaucracy being responsible that was not accountable. So, that is the source of my Euroscepticism.
Let's talk. You say you still got robust views. You just demonstrated some of your robust views on politics. Let's look at today's Conservative Party. People, it's lazy to look for historical parallels. But you will have witnessed Margaret Thatcher in peril, obviously. Well, she resigned. John Major had a really difficult time. Ian Duncan Smith, you've analysed what it's like to be in a perilous political position. Do you see any parallels between what's happening in today's Conservative Party with what's gone before?
Well, I mean, of course I do. I mean, in the sense that the Conservative Party very often changes its leader and very often does so even in office. I mean, how often have we seen that? I'm not going to take a position of saying that the Prime Minister should go. And I've been rather surprised to hear people who are leaders of the Conservative Party saying that. And I'll tell you a reason why I think that's quite important. Boris Johnson has many attributes and qualities and many, many flaws. But he has won 4 elections, 2 to become mayor of London. London is virtually a socialist city, so this was an extraordinary achievement. Then he headed up the referendum campaign, which won. And then he won a majority of 80 seats. And I see people telling him that he should resign, that the Conservatives should get someone else. And these are people who, to my knowledge and memory, haven't won anything. I mean, they may have held on to safe seats, having been selected. But, you know, they've never won a national election. In the case of one of them, they didn't even win the leadership of the Conservative Party because nobody else stood. Nobody else wanted the job. So I certainly don't think it's my job to say the Conservative Party should find another leader. And I do think, you know, it's interesting, but I do remember this film. I do think it's interesting that lots of Conservative MPs seem to think they should change leader without having a clue who would take over and why that would be any better. And I do recall speaking to, I think it was Alan Clark, when the question of Margaret Thatcher's leadership came up. I think it was then, or it may have been John Majors. But anyway, I remember this expression. He said, let's just throw a grenade into the pond. In other words, he just wanted to blow the whole thing up and see what emerged from the situation. Well, that to me is just not responsible politics. But I think there are quite a lot of people in the Conservative Party today, and it happens again and again, who just want to throw a grenade in the pond. They have no idea whether having got rid of Boris, things will be better or not. And why does this happen? One of the reasons is because the party consists now largely of people who are disappointed or unappointed or de-appointed. In other words, they didn't get into office or they've been thrown out of office. And this becomes a very large group of people. And what they think is, whoever is the Prime Minister after Boris Johnson, I have a better chance of being a junior minister and having a ministerial car and a red box under someone else. And that becomes a very powerful engine.
So last week, former Conservative Party leader Michael Howard, you were peers, he said he should go. You're being quite careful not to say that. Do you think that's right for people who are no longer elected politicians? Should they stay out of it?
It's not even particularly that. I mean, if it were Margaret Thatcher, she's no longer with us, but if it was someone who'd won 3 general elections, saying, I think this person should go because they're not good enough, I could just about understand it. But people who've won nothing, telling someone who's won 4 general elections that he should go, I find that very difficult to deal with.
Are you sad that you never became Prime Minister?
Absolutely not. No, I was spared that.
Because you really wanted it. You were on a trajectory.
No. That's a different thing. I don't think I did really want it. It's true that I was on a trajectory. It's true that I was on a trajectory. And I don't know whether the trajectory was of my making or of other people's. In other words, I don't know whether I was actually playing out other people's expectations. There was a moment when John Majors re-stood for the leadership of the Conservative Party when it might have fallen out that I might have become leader. And I could imagine myself doing the job of Prime Minister. I think I'm quite decisive and I'm quite organised, things which actually Boris is not. So in a way, I can imagine that part of the job of Prime Minister as being, to me, quite easy. But the bit that is not easy for me, clearly, is winning elections. I mean, I lost a safe seat. So I wouldn't be comfortable with that part of it. And I don't think I had the temperament. You're reminding me with this interview just how nerve-wracking it is to do an interview. One of the reasons why I wasn't much liked in the old days and why I'm supposedly a national treasure now is that when you're doing an interview with a Jeremy Paxman or a Gloria De Piero or whoever it may be, it's quite hard to look relaxed and jolly. But when you are presenting a railway journey, a travel programme, or a programme about some other part of history, of course you can be as relaxed and as charming as you wish. And by the way, you can have 10 takes as well.
You're coming across as utterly charming. And I think you might be the first person to ever put me and Jeremy Paxman as interviewers in the same sentence, but it's certainly not what I strive to be. Your reflections are absolutely fascinating. Just one more light-hearted question to finish with. Are you and Diane Abbott mates? Because you were put on this television programme together. You were great fun. You on the, an arch right-winger, her an arch left-winger. And you seem to get on TV. Did you get on off camera too? Yes, we did. It was rather odd because we knew each other at school reasonably well. At school? At school, yes. Oh. She was at Harrow County School for Girls. I was at Harrow County School for Boys. And we used to do drama together. And in fact, I cast her as Lady Macduff
in a film version of Macbeth, which never got made. However, when years later, I remembered Diane as being very shy and self-effacing. And when years later, a rather self-confident woman got elected to Parliament, who also had the name Diane Abbott, I couldn't quite believe it was the same person. In fact, for a while, I didn't believe it was the same person. Now, the producers of This Week didn't know that we'd been at school together, yet they threw us together. And we were meant to do it just for the 12 weeks, and then we would be moved on. And then that didn't happen. We did it, I don't know, for the best part of 10 years together. And yes, we got on well on the set. And very occasionally, I remember we went to Edinburgh to do a couple of shows around the time of the referendum and so on. And we just went out to dinner, the two of us, and had a perfectly nice time. But we haven't particularly stayed in touch. But there was a chemistry there. I think there was a chemistry. And I think that was because we'd been at school. For some reason, that leaves some vestige in the bloodstream, so that we did get on. And if anyone said you want to do a television program with Diane Abbott in the future, I would, of course, say yes. And there was something about the formula of that show which nobody else has replicated, which I'm slightly surprised about.
Well, I'd love to present a TV show with you. This has been an utter pleasure. Michael Portillo, thank you.
Gloria, thank you for being so charming.